Welcome back to Joe Stunner Boxing. Sebastian Fundora springs a big upset, beats TIM TSZYU on split decision. It should have been unanimous in my view. Pair of 116s either way, and then a 115, 113 in favour of Fundora to win it. Fundora, of course, Sebastian Fundora, 6'6", 80-inch reach. Basically, he's got the dimensions of a heavyweight, and yet he's a 154 pounder. It's freakish. And by the way, Fundora's sister, Gabriella, I think her name is the IBF flyweight champion, and she's about 5'9". So, like I said before, this family must have at one point fallen asleep in a greenhouse. I don't know, but they are the first brother and sister, by the way, to hold world titles simultaneously, ever, I think. But this fight had plenty of drama. It was a gruelling, not really a thrilling fight, but kind of absorbing. Probably because it was an absolute bloodbath, all right? First round, in fact, the first two rounds I gave to TSZYU. I thought he came out, Fundora weren't doing a lot, pouring with the jab, trying to sort of get the range and have a look. And a couple of times, TIM TSZYU fired an overhand right, Fundora's southpaw, pinged Fundora's head back. You know, good punches, real good, but they were individual punches. But I definitely gave the first two rounds to TSZYU. And Fundora, in fact, had blood coming out of his nose from quite early on. Now, in the third round, something happened. And that was it at the end of the second round? I know there was a second to go. I think it was the end of the second round. TSZYU went in, because obviously Fundora was so much taller. And Fundora was trying to defend himself. And TSZYU actually ran into Fundora's elbow, top of his head, and it wasn't really a cut, it was more like a dent, and it started bleeding profusely. I mean, the injury may have occurred on the bell. It was so late in the round, and you could tell, TSZYU's sitting there in the corner, his blood pouring all over his face. Like, what the hell is that? How did that happen? And they showed the replay. Now, having said that, when the third round started, obviously the blood was pouring down TSZYU's face, and getting into his eyes, no doubt. But Fundora himself had his own injuries because his face was bloodied as well. He had blood coming out of his nose. There was a cut in his mouth. This was, from the third round on, this was, like I said, an absolute bloodbath. But because of that injury, the injury that was run into the blood was run into the eyes of TSZYU, he kind of lost momentum. He lost rhythm, and it knocked him out of his game plan, which I suppose is understandable. But at the same time, don't take nothing away from Fundora, because he had injuries too, and he held his nerve, and he started jabbing, bang, bang, lots of jabs. They said at post-fight, 8 jabs around. There's got to be more than that, I thought. And he was being very, very crafty, Fundora. Look, in his previous fight, he got knocked flat by Brian Mendoza, because he fought small. He spent his entire career fighting small. He did that against Erickson Lubin and almost came a cropper, got floored, but beat Lubin up and stopped him. And he actually quit. He was pulled out on his stool, Lubin, because of horrendous facial damage. But this time, Fundora was boxing tall, boxing sensibly, using those long dimensions. And TSZYU, with his injury, and completely knocked out of his rhythm, and he couldn't get the range. He could, obviously, if even if you've got blood in one eye, your depth perception is affected badly. He couldn't get close, and he was resorting to sort of firing stiff single punches. Okay, he'd done that in the first 2 rounds, but there was more of an air of desperation. Now, the big mistake that TSZYU made was he didn't fire to the body enough, not nearly enough. And you've got a 6'6" guy in front of you. What's the biggest target? The body. Now, the first 2 rounds, of course, he was landing with single punches to the head. Maybe that made him sort of forget about the body, or subconsciously he was just being way too, he was headhunting too much. But that definitely contributed to his downfall, especially with the injury and the limited vision. You would think he would be banging to the body constantly from, the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. He didn't really start banging to the body until maybe the 9th or 10th. 9th, I think. Well, 10th, He landed a couple of good body punches. And I'm sitting here watching it thinking, why didn't you do that earlier? Why didn't you do it? But Fundora deserves colossal respect for holding his nerve especially off the back of that defeat to Brian Mendoza being knocked flat. And he deserved this decision. I had it 116-112 for Fundora. There's a rematch clause. Tszyu, they might run it back. Tszyu is going to say, well, you know, that the injury affected me a great deal, which it did. That's not a lie. But you see, it's weird because I picked Tszyu to win this by stoppage. But a lot of that prediction was based on the fact that Fundora had been knocked flat previously. It was a bad knockout he'd suffered. And I just wondered, he's always fought small as well. And I just wondered, is he going to try and is he going to be prepared for it psychologically, mentally? Has he got some ghosts floating around in his head, you know, haunting him over that knockout? Not a bit of it. I mean, this young man is a real fighting man. So is Tim TSZYU. I mean, respect to Tim TSZYU as well. You know, this defeat don't mean a great deal. I mean, he's still a top fighter. But Fundora's only 26, and to come back from a big knockout defeat like that, and pinch not one but two belts, because he had the WBO belt, which belonged to TSZYU, and the WBC belt was on the line, which was vacant. So he's now got two straps. And yeah, the rematch is on. TSZYU, what is he at, 28, 29 now, something like that. Yeah, he's in his prime, he can come back. But I did think if Fundora hadn't been knocked out, my prediction may have been very different, because let's just say Fundora had been undefeated coming in. My prediction would have been different, because I'd have thought, okay, 6'6", you know, 80-inch wingspan, reach. This guy's going to give anyone problems, including Tim TSZYU. And I do think that Tim TSZYU, although he is a very good fighter, I think some people, perhaps Australians, tend to sort of overrate him slightly. It doesn't mean that he's a bad fighter. He's a very good fighter. But they were talking about him mopping up everything and being undisputed and all that. I'd yet to see evidence of that occurring. Now, after the fight, TSZYU said, hey, I'll have the rematch. But what about you, Terence Crawford? Come up and see me, you know. No, mate. Go get your belts. See if you can beat Fundora, which is going to be extremely difficult, even without an injury. And then maybe go after, Bud. But there's someone else apparently is in the mix as well, and that is Errol Spence, who was ringside and actually got in the ring afterwards and congratulated Fundora. It was very respectful. But he wants Fundora as well. So this is interesting. It's all panning out at 154 after a lull at the 154 level. We got some potential good matchups here. But yeah, I mean, all respect for Sebastian Fundora. Well done. He's now 21 wins with 13 KOs and that one defeat to Mendoza. Tim TSZYU drops to 24 wins, one defeat. He's got 17 KOs in his wins column. And they're going to run it back. I think they should. It's a good fight. Like I say, it wasn't thrilling, but it was very absorbing and really, the blood flying everywhere and the intrigue of the styles and, the injuries and so on. What did you think? What did you think of this fight? Do you think the right man won? Perhaps you thought Tim TSZYU deserved it. I don't, but, okay, one of the judges went for TSZYU. Maybe you agree. Leave your comments below. And of course, subscribe to the channel if you're new and hit the like button as well. Give that like button a little right-hander and all. And spread the word about Joe Stunner Boxing. Tell all your mates who like boxing to come over here and subscribe and, all that good stuff. All right. Thanks a lot. Looking forward to reading your comments and bye for now.